All right, so let's make a formal introduction for our listener. Good afternoon, Sami. My name is Claudia. I'm calling you from Washington, D.C. From the studios in Fairfax City. We're very humble and grateful that Sami Abadi accepted our invitation to our show. Sami, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks a lot.
So tell me, so whatever is in with the whole world is upside down with the COVID and the pandemic and the difficulty to go outside. Some people want to take the vaccine. Some people don't believe the vaccine. You know, as yourself as a musician, you can know tour that much and do shows and recording that kind of stuff. How the stuff is affecting your life, your sanity, your creativity, and everything, man.
Well, uh, these are obviously hard times. These are not easy times, and I have not much to say about uh, what what are we dealing with because I don't know what is this pandemic moment. I don't know about science. I do not know about medicine. The only thing that I know is that we are waiting for all this to come to an end.
Yeah,
And in the meantime, we are trying to learn um, as much as we can from this from these strange times we have to live. Um, I think that um, we are going to understand how this is affecting us in a few years. Not right now, because everything is happening right now, and we are not very conscious of what is this all about. So I maybe I think I don't know, the whole world is upside down, as you said, and things are really strange. I had the opportunity to live whole for a whole year with my wife and my son, 24 hours a day, and this is unusual. And as you know, my son is 5 years old. He was 4 years old last year, and somehow I think, well, but maybe this was some kind of miracle that I have been able to share with him as uh, as long a time.
sure, absolutely.
Uh, that's in the positive side of things, and there is a negative side of things. And I don't know. I am particularly fed up with the situation, but there is no one to blame. It's just something that is is not as we have we would have um, chose this. So I'm just waiting for it to end. Here in Argentina, I hope that after the winter, we are going to say goodbye to this bad time, and because spring is coming and all the vaccination is on. So well, let's hope we can leave this behind very soon.
And all the venues are still closed. So little by little, they're opening up the pubs and theaters and then big venue. Little by little, they start opening up so people can go and see a show, and go outside. And it's
Yes, little by little, it is beginning to open in new in a new set in a new setting, maybe for less people with distance and all kind of things. But uh, just today, I am programming my next show that hopefully it will be in a month in a theater here in Buenos Aires, Argentina.
yeah.
But you don't know because we are not still completely open.
Wow. So it's going to be hard because you guys, as a musician, right? Either you're teaching at an institute or private lesson, or the only way you get paid is performing, right? It used to be where
Yeah,
people were selling CDs and vinyl, that kind of stuff. No anymore, right? You make money when you play, but basically, right? So
yeah. In all honesty, um, art music does not give you much money. So it's a shame we cannot play gigs, absolutely, but not exactly because of money. It's more like a purpose in life, and a need, an inner need to play and to make art, but not specifically about money. That is my situation. There is an interaction between all the music business, if you want to call it that way, and one of the things that stand your music business might be your live performance, but but um, live performance does not play an important role in the economic life of musicians nowadays, and this is uh, something that few musicians like to accept it publicly. Mm. It is something that is not said um, loudly in an interview, but we all know that is the reality. We are doing it because we need it, and we have followers and an audience, but this is not about money.
I understand. Yeah, I understand. Yes. Let's go back to the beginning. Were you born like in a musical family and people at the home, where the mom, the teacher, were a lot of records at home, or when did you start
No,
taking, then the follow-up question, taking, violin lesson or guitar, or when everything started for you?
it's really something of how can I say it? It's something that comes very particularly from myself. My family was not at the time into music or into art, um, or into anything about that, but I was aware from very early that music was important to me. I have some memories from me at 2 years old or 3 years old, which in which music played an important role. Something I have um, deep memories of being touched by music from the very beginning of my life, and I have found I have found the opportunities in a non-musical environment to find music. So I took very good advantage of the music lessons at school, at primary school. There was a choir. I used to sing in that choir, and I learned a lot from that experience. I paid a lot of attention of what was musically alive around me, and took from all of that. And as a child, I got some music lessons. Um, there is an institution here that is called an institution, an educational institute that is called Collegium Musicum. Collegium Musicum is a school that used to teach the first lessons to children in music, and I was part of that program. And then I got my first guitar at 11 years old and managed to play it. That was but nothing very um, well established. I was grabbing from everywhere where I could grab. Then I took lessons I always had to pay my lessons for myself because my parents wouldn't like me to play music or to become a musician. But you know, that's why I say there is something very, very um, um, genuine or unavoidable in a way, impossible to avoid. That was that I was willing and going to be a musician.
They,
And
yeah, so I'm sorry, person, but they didn't want to pay for it because they thought that music was not important and you should go to school and become a doctor, engineer, or you didn't have the means to do it, or
no, the first thing, that's correct.
oh yeah,
They
I got
wouldn't like to pay for it. Um, it's not that we were rich, but we could afford some lessons. But they choose not to do it as soon as they realized that music could be my way, and they would not support it.
you. Yeah.
That was something that well, it's not unusual or was not unusual on those days because I am now 55 years old, and 40 years ago, when I was a teenager, to be a musician was not an option that was in the menu of some traditional families, I could say, or
Yeah.
typical families, middle class families. Now, nowadays, everybody is a musician.
It's acceptable nowadays.
It's acceptable, and we have lots of musicians. It's all kind of careers have opened happily,
Yeah.
but on those days there were not as many acceptable careers.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, right? So, and I told you before, I like a wide range of stuff, right? From jazz, from rock, from electronic, for soundtrack. And a good example, 4 years ago or something, uh, I don't know, Soda Stereo was born, and then Soda Stereo became the best rock band in the Spanish world by far. I mean, we'll we'll need to wait probably 100 years before somebody come even close, right? And Sweet Generis and Charlie Garcia and Flaco Spinetta and Pedro Aznar, and so very very good music. But it was, I suppose, it was difficult to make a living. I mean, if you're going to become very very good, then you become you can make a living. But if you are just like an average, it's very difficult to make a living, as opposed to, well, you want to make money, go to school, go become an engineer, or a doctor, and do kind of music on the side as a hobby. But
Well,
to convince your
in
parents
fact,
to go,
in
right?
fact, I think that the generation that came before me, my parents, they didn't have a clue about it.
Yeah,
They did not even say you have to be good or you have to do this or you have to do that. They did not have a clue. It was a generation that knew very few things, the few things that were in his small world,
yeah,
and that was all. Uh, as as about making a living in music, the reality is very different. It's not about being good or not being good because this is something that it's very difficult to measure. Uh, and there is things that are not good and that sell a lot, and there are things that do not sell and are excellent
oh, gotcha,
for
yeah,
me, or there are branches in the music industry where you can make a living, and it doesn't matter the quality of music, but in what part of the business you are. I mean, you can be a good mastering engineer and have a lot of work because you are demanded. and that has nothing to do with music, but
got
with
you.
the technical aspect of music. So, uh, and there are a lot of branches in which you could work into music. And ultimately, I feel you have to find your own niche in which you can be good and be necessary. But well, um, I don't know if I am into your question.
No, 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 you did, you did. Yeah. So, and then, so when you finished the equivalent of high school here in the United States, and were you involved in bands with other people? Were you part of a big group and either playing guitar or doing keyboards or violin? When you make the decision, say, man, music is going to be my way of life, and I don't care what everybody else say or think or whatever. I This is my thing, and I want
Yeah,
to go for it.
as soon as I finished high school, I knew I was going to be a musician,
Yeah,
and I had a kind of profile. I knew what I wanted to do. I mean, I wanted to be into art music. I mean, I was studying violin, but not to be a musician at an orchestra. That was not the side of music which attracted me. I would my model was maybe Jean-Luc Ponty. I mean, if I imagined or envisioned myself with a violin, the setting was a band where I could compose and lead, or be a part of a band. Um, I grew up with all the sound of the 70s. So for me, violin was an instrument that could be among synthesizers, electric guitars, drums, wind instruments, and all sort of things. But I was not envisioning a violin that was in a camber uh, environment, not initially. So that was I decided that that was my way. Um, and then I was studying to become that musician that I imagined that could do those kind of things.
yeah, I got you. What kind of music you were listening? If you mentioned the 70s and the 80s, what kind of music were you listening to? You do have like um, a lot of vinyl and radio that you could access. That was before CDs. So
Well, I have a very important vinyl collection
yeah,
that I have been collecting from my I bought my first record at 12 years old,
yeah,
and so and my records are still with me because I always say that records are my music education. My real music education are records, and then I have studied with a lot of teachers and schools and workshops and classes and whatever, but the real lessons are the things.
got you. Yeah,
Hmm?
yeah.
So um, I'm sorry, I lost myself in your question.
You were saying about the records. The records, the vinyl is the
Okay,
real
okay.
education.
You wanted to know which bands I like, maybe.
Yeah,
Uh, I liked a lot of bands, but maybe I should name those which had a violin at one point of
yeah,
another, or which inspired me to include a violin. No, for instance, we had King Crimson,
yeah,
and they had violin or viola,
yeah,
and then we have UK with Eddie Jobson. He was a very huge influence to me, Eddie Jobson, and UK as a band, and then we had bands which had a flute, not a violin, but a flute. And I thought if a flute can be in that kind of progressive rock, then a violin can also be. For instance, Focus, Camel,
Sure.
and Shepherdal. Those were bands which had a flute, and Premiata Formeria Marconi.
Yeah.
That was another important for me because, well, they had violins and flute, and it was the same musician, by the way. I had on those days, great admiration, high regard for those musicians who could play more than one instrument. So Eddie Jobson, he was an excellent keyboard player as well as a violin player. Or Mauro Pagani from Premiata Formeria Marconi, he could play a lot of instruments, violin and flute, and he also played mandolin and bouzouki. Andy Latimer from Camel, he is a great guitar player, but he also played the flute. So that was something that attracted me a lot. So there was, you have to study.
Sure. Man, you mentioned very good name. I did have the opportunity with a friend to interview Premiata PFM, and they're very good. And I interview one guy from King Crimson, and King Crimson is going to be touring here in the United States, so I'm going to be seeing them a couple of times in October. So I'm hoping to get a confirmation email, because I'm going to be interviewing Robert Frick, hopefully in September, October. So
Wonderful.
I'm very lucky to do this stuff, to talk to people. And
well, now I should not forget Mahavishnu Orchestra.
of course, yeah, Mahavishnu.
Because of the inclusion of violins.
Right.
Jean-Luc Ponty, he was a member of Mahavishnu, and he also played with Frank Zappa, which I love, absolutely. So there is something about, well, I was playing guitar from very early years, but I felt that the guitar had been explored broadly. So I felt that I wanted a new instrument, something that is not so well represented, so highly represented as was the electric guitar. Nowadays, I'm not sure. I don't know, but that was a choice in those days. So I began to study violin with the idea of making it electric as soon as possible.
Right. And then you, in your composition, I mean, if you need to pick one, you are more comfortable, or you prefer to do either keyboard, violin, guitar, or you like to have the freedom to do a little bit of everything, depending of the year, right? So this year you want to do more jazzy, and then or more rock, and you always do in your music, right? There's a combination of different things, different influences, not just,
Yes, that's correct. Um, I don't know if I prefer an instrument. I would say that I don't, but I am known as a violin player,
Yeah.
and my image is associated with the violin.
Yeah.
But I think myself mostly as a composer.
I got you. Right.
And not as much as an instrumentalist. Instruments are important because it's the way you find to express your ideas. So, but I have, like we could say, I have harmonic ideas and formal ideas, or compositional ideas that sometimes are better expressed on a keyboard. And I have melodic ideas of expression, of articulation, of sound, of timbre, that are better expressed in a violin. And what I'm trying to do is to find an integration, because I'm also interested in rhythm a lot. I mean, interested in rhythm, it means that I want to play it myself. So I work with mix of electronic percussion instruments, and it's not hard to integrate all of that on a recording environment, but it's harder to do on a live set. And my live set is mostly a solo set.
Gotcha.
So I am always struggling to find a way of having my violin here, a keyboard here, some electronic percussion here, or a sequencer there, and being able to work it all together. And that's why, as I told you earlier, I am using bass pedals. Not to play bass exactly, but to play harmony with my feet.
Gotcha. Wow.
So playing harmony with my feet and the violin with my hands, it comes close to the idea of playing it all.
I understand.
And why do I do that? It's not
Yeah.
because I am like an antisocial. I'm not at all. I am absolutely social guy, but there is something that I strive for, that I look for, that is to be able to make the music that I am imagining on the spot. Something that might be called improvisation, but the word improvisation, and mostly in English, is used mostly for other things, that is for soloing. And I do not think about improvisation in terms of soloing. Soloing is not as much interesting to me as is to compose a whole piece. So that is improvisation for me, to compose a whole piece with all the parts on the spot, and that's why I need to play it all. When I do not get to play it all, I find the proper partners. So that's why I have a trio with Ulises Lavaroni and Ernesto Romeo. We have a trio, and I have a group of musicians who play in a group that we call the Sami Abadi Orchestra, and it's a group of the musicians rotate, but they all know a kind of language we are developing, a language of improvisation, of understanding of each other. But it's not improvisation about soloing. It's improvisation about building. That it's a different thing.
I understand. No, I completely understand. Let's go over. I was listening to. Let's go over your music. I had the opportunity to listen to a lot of different things. For some stuff you sent me, some stuff from Spotify, web and so forth. And I want to bring the attention a couple of tracks from. And free to elaborate on how that composition come together. One is called Pacific, from the album Escuela de Vuelo para Amphibios. That's a beautiful piece, man.
Thank you. Okay, well, this album, you are happy to speak Spanish because it's not easy to pronounce for not Spanish speakers. Amphibian School of Flight, that would be the translation. This album is all made with toy instruments. There are some bits of violin here and there, but mostly it's all toy instruments, very cheap instruments that you can find here on what we was formerly the $1 shops. Do you remember? Maybe
Yeah.
you have seen that in the States.
We do.
We
Yeah, we
used to
do.
have that here. We don't have it anymore. So it's this kind of instruments, mostly from China, and very cheap things, which I gathered and began to make to create the imaginary music of an imaginary island. That is the concept of that album, that maybe you will find it very different from other things that I did. Not as, indeed, everything is connected, but on the surface it sounds very different. And the idea was make music of a lost island, of or an imaginary island, maybe in the Pacific. That's why the song is called Pacific.
Yeah.
And I'm playing with the idea of um, the music of Indonesia or something like that, but without making a real inquiry of that music, but just playing with my imagination. It's not gamelan music at all, but it has a wink with that kind of music. Or it's not music from gagaku, that is the music of traditional music from Japan. I have studied traditional music from different parts of the world, and I am playing with that without being ethnomusicology. It's just a game.
I understand. The other great track is called Itaki from the album Arco Voltaico, and I picked like different track from different albums, so we can. That's another great album actually, the Arco Voltaico, Itaki, and feel free to elaborate the same question for that one. It's a beautiful piece.
Great. Well, arco voltaico would translate. You know better than me because you are an engineer. I think that is electric bowery, isn't
Yeah.
it? Okay, so it's a pun of words, because the electric violin has a bow and it's electric. So that's why electric bowery, arco voltaico. And the whole album is centered on just a violin, a looper, and a reverb processor. It's a very small setting, a set very portable. You could put it in a small bag and travel with it. So it's music that is made with very few things, and even that, even so, it does not sound as a single instrument because of the looper. I consider that my instrument is the violin, my instrument might be the keyboard or the guitar, but undoubtedly my instrument is the looper. The looper it can be understood as an instrument. And from early on, when I was playing the violin, trying to do things myself, I began to use long delays and then loopers to make a lot of layers and to work as a kind of orchestra. Well, so Itaki, it's well, the whole album Arco Voltaico has something to do with the legend of Icarus. So it has to do with Greek, with the ancient Greece, and Ithaki is the place, the island from where Ulysses came, and he wanted to return. Okay, so by the way, Ulysses is another album.
Can you put together? Yeah.
You see, there is a kind of imagination that goes around about about those Greek legends or myths. Well, and Itaki in the album Arco Voltaico has 4 parts. There is Itaki 1, and there is kind of development, and it all has to do with a poem of a Greek poet called Cavafis, who wrote a poem called Ithaca. Ithaca is Ithaki. It's the island from. It's the place where you want to go back. It's the the moment where you stop searching and you begin to find. That is this is a metaphor about that. Well, and it's all done with a looper and electric violin, following. Everything is orchestrated on the spot, made on layers on the looper.
Understand. The other track that I really like is the Árbol de las Ilusiones from the Sami Abadi. That's another beautiful piece too, and feel free to elaborate on that as well.
Well, thank you. This is a hybrid piece because I decided early on to not take an only approach to music, but to change approaches. So this could be the opposite. Árbol de las Ilusiones, or Illusions Tree, it's the opposite of Arco Voltaico, in the sense that it's post-produced and edited and mixed. It's a mishmash made at the digital audio workstation. So in the DAW, I put together different things. There is experimentation, a bit of experimentation that I made with looping some sitars, zithers, okay? And there are bits of a live concert. The ambient moments that are on the piece are live recordings that I put together, and then all the synthesizers are played on the studio later. So it's like a huge collage that I hope that you don't realize that it's a collage. And it's very representative of my sound. That is it's a piece that could summarize very well my sound, except for it doesn't have a lot of violin. It has an ambient middle part made with the harmonics of a violin, but not much violin soloing, which could be part of my sound. Except for that, it's very, very well, a very good representation of my sound.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I noticed that you have done over 500 shows, presentation, and wow, that's a lot, man. They're very impressive.
Yeah, because you were talking about Robert Fripp some minutes ago, and when I was 16 years old, I read an interview with Robert, who was saying that he was out from King Crimson because King Crimson was a dinosaur. He was saying that in those days, and that he was favoring small mobile units. So when I read that, it stayed with me. It stuck with me, and I thought I will be one of those small mobile units, so that I could play everywhere. I bought later. I bought one of his free Pertronics vinyls, and it has on the cover, on the flip side, it had the list of the concert of the concerts he had done with the Freepertronics, and I knew because I had read some interviews that he would travel only himself with the guitar, two machines, and an engineer, and he would go all around Europe with a small setting. So that's why he could play so many concerts. So he was my role model from very early, and I thought, well, my set will be a small one because I want to play everywhere. So my set is basically a violin that I can carry here, and with a little bag, a small bag, 2 or 3 pedals, and I can play everywhere. I even have a very small amp that I could carry here, like
Really?
if I have to go, well, it's like a bag.
Yeah.
So if they don't have a sound, I can, if the venue is not large, it's not very big, I can even bring my own sound. So that's why it's been more than 25 years that I play gigs, solo gigs, and it's not hard for me to arrive to anywhere, go and make my show.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful. That's a good analogy. The way you put it together. Another album that, and I really like this one. In my opinion, well, they're different. All the stuff you have done, but in my opinion, the best stuff you've done is Amber and Topaz. Yeah, it's you know, I didn't want to pick a track in particular. That's why I say the whole album is very beautiful, man. Very, very beautiful. Very, very well put.
I'm very happy that you like it. That album was made without me knowing that I have that I had made it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was. It was a summer, and I was in my studio just trying things out, and I on those days I had a DAT recorder. Do you remember that? The little cassettes.
The little cassette,
yeah. Okay, so what I did at those times was from my mixing console directly to that recorder. I recorded everything. So I received later that year an email from Japan asking me for my newest album, and I sent them another different thing that I was working at that was pretty experimental. And I told them, I have this that is pretty experimental, and I have some tracks that I've been working on last summer. And they told me, send us please both things. And they chose the tracks of the summer. That is, I considered something that I was like a work in progress, not something finished. But they realized what I did not realize, that is that that work was ready. So they released it in Japan. And there is something I could say very clearly what I was working at in each album. Yeah. I mean, in the first album, I was working with a pedal board and the looper, and that's all. And it's like kind of lo-fi, because it was very like what I play, that is a record. Gotcha. Then I changed the setting, and it was still violin and processors, but more hi-fi. I mean, I changed it, no more pedal board and a mixer and high quality processors, always in real time. And that was Lunar, my second CD. Is a violin and processors. but with a very careful sound, very yeah, like a polished sound. Then there is the third album, that is Escuela de Vuelo para Anfibios. It's all the work with toy instruments and electronic processors. That is, from my second set, I took the processors, but I kept the processors, but took out the violin and put their toy instruments.
Yeah.
So then come my fourth album, that is Amber and Topaz. And what happens there is that on my second album, Lunar, there were some moments where I tried to play all the instruments into the looper. And then going on with that thread is that I come to Amber and Topaz. The idea was to play all the instruments mostly into the looper. And I feel influences on Amber and Topaz of that 70s music that I loved. That's why it's an album that I'm very fond of, because it sounds like my heroes or something like that. It has influences of that 70s sound. Not exactly, but somehow.
I got you. I understand. In terms of your general career, now that you are at home, do you miss touring and then playing live music? I mean, do you go crazy that you cannot, play that much live music you like? Some people like, they're a studio musician, right? And they don't want to interact that much with people, and they do a concert here and there. And other people, they want to go on the road for a long time and so forth, which is very difficult to do if you have a family and so forth. But do you miss touring and playing live music in front of an audience?
Not that much. Not that much. I mean, when I was young and we were speaking about my childhood and my teenage days, I also started painting.
Yeah.
And the painter does not perform in front of the audience. So sometimes I feel that if I cannot play live, then I can be a painter of sounds. So I'm not very concerned of not being able to play live, as long as I can play and record here.
I got you. I understand. Yeah.
So making music has different expressions. You can do it in front of an audience, or you can do it in front of the recorder, of the recording equipment.
Absolutely right.
So, or you cannot even record, but just studying things. So I think that the important thing is making music, no matter how. Play for yourself, play for the camera, play for the DAW, play for the audience, but make music.
Yeah, great music. In all those shows that you have done in Argentina, in Latin America, in Europe, in many other places you have played, is one or two memorable concert that you look back and say, man, everything clicked that night. The weather was great, if it was outside, or the setting, the orchestra, and the other musicians play unbelievable. Like you want to go to bed and say, this is it. I cannot play any better than that. Is any one or two that you look back and say, man, I remember that?
Those and probably those were the concerts, the more underground concerts.
Yeah.
No? Because, for instance, we have here in Buenos Aires, we have a clandestine venue.
Yes.
It's clandestine. It's out of the law. That it's called Una Casa.
Yeah.
It's a house, an old house, and and there is an underground, really
Like a basement?
sótano.
Like a
A
basement?
basement, yeah, a basement. There is a basement. You have to say a password to get to the place, because you
Wow.
don't get to the place. So when I went there to play, there were 30 people in the audience, no more. And I played there a lot of times because I like the place. The sound system they have is ridiculous. It's very old. It's broken. But all the same, it has humidity in the walls. But I don't know why. Um, every time I play there, it sounds great.
Yeah.
So maybe those extremely underground shows are my favorite. And also, I am playing shows here in this studio where we are talking now, because this is my home, and my studio is now in my home. It's a big room here, and in not pandemic days where people can gather and be together, you can have here 10 or 12 persons.
Oh.
So I played a couple of concerts here for very, very few people, 10,
Yeah.
10 people, and I enjoy it absolutely, because this is my place where I have all my instruments, and the sound check begins a week earlier of the show, because I live here. So I begin to check sounds, instruments, change things, change cables if there's something that I don't like how it's working. All sorts of things. I can do it with very um, a lot of days in advance, and then if the show is a concert is on Saturday, I am sound checking on Saturday morning at my place, and then I have lunch and keep on playing. So when the audience arrives, I am absolutely ready, and the sound is the sound that I want. This is my place. Well, so this is something that I like. Maybe I will go on with this after these pandemic days.
Like a small concert, small setting, 10 to 20 people at home. Well,
Yeah,
you gotta invite me one day, man. When I'm in Buenos Aires, you need to.
of course, of course. You are invited right now.
Okay,
Consider yourself invited.
thank you, thank you. Feel free to
I will
elaborate
tell you
in.
more. When
Sorry.
you when you come to Buenos Aires,
Yeah.
I have not announced the show. I will announce it as you are able to come.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. As I told you, I don't know if I told you. I told Ulises, my dad uh, had like a big music collection, tango. So and jazz. So I began listening music when I was a baby. That's what my dad told me, that uh, the first, according to my dad, right, the first two things that I listened to, I believe, they were Louis Armstrong and then Carlos Gardel. You know, that's what, or Pugliese. I forgot now. You know, Pugliese, Canaro. I don't remember. But no, there probably was Carlos Gardel. I don't know. And so my dad, they have a lot of connection with your country, and for the music, yeah, he had a lot of music. So I began listening when I was a baby. That's what, I began. I bought my first record, a Jean-Luc Ponty album in 1976, right? And then the rest is history. Like you, I'm collecting stuff. So tango was part of my life. Feel free to elaborate on the instrument. And not many people know that I think it's called Tenori-on, right? I think it was designed by Toshu Iwai and produced by Yamaha. Feel free to elaborate on that, because this is an important instrument for you, and
Okay.
you can show if
Maybe
you want.
I could put it close for
Yeah,
you to see, because it's there.
yeah. Of course.
If you give me one moment, I
Yeah,
will prepare for you.
Yeah. If you will, right?
Yes, well, it's a shame. I will show it to you anyway.
Yeah, from that angle is fine. You don't need to take it out, right? Right, I got you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, so these are LEDs.
Yeah.
These are LEDs, and every LED has a function. Okay. Okay. For me, it's a very powerful instrument. It's actually a sequencer.
Yeah.
It's a sequencer of 16 tracks, which is a lot, and not all the tracks have the same behavior. So it's very interesting because some of them are cyclical, but some of them are not. My next album, that is called Noche Niño Remolino, it's due in August. It's entirely done in the Tenori-on.
Oh, gotcha.
It's a 45 minutes work. It's an only work of 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's entirely done on the Tenori-on without any other instrument. So you can imagine that if an instrument can hold such a long time, is because it has big capabilities. It's very interesting, and I use it live because I was interested in some things that the violin could not offer in my solo concerts, and still being a small mobile unit. So this is a very, very small instrument that can come with me in my bag and does a huge amount of things, mostly rhythm things,
Yeah.
things that have to do with rhythm and polyrhythm, because that's the part of the percussion is the area where violin cannot work. I have made some experience beating on my violin, beating on different places of the violin, and achieved some results, but very limited. So I began to work with different things to cover that area, and so I came to know the Tenori-on, and it's a very important companion to me in my concerts, because, well, it gives a new area to the show.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I saw a video. They sent me one that you're doing with. I think it was your living room and like 10 people sitting there, and that was beautiful. It sounds very, very good. It sounds very, very good. So it was. I'm very happy with your music, man. Hopefully this show and the radio will help you to get the word out there, and then when you upload the interview to, for people in Latin America know you, but people in Europe, United States that don't know your music, to give you a try. And I'm glad that this interview is in English, and people can listen to your music. And I mentioned I want to be doing a show because your stuff is very good, man. I need to be heard. It's a lot of great music coming from.
There are lots of musicians all around the world that are known by just small groups of
Yeah, right.
fans, of connoisseurs, of people who knows, and we don't have a massive audience, but we are known by small groups of fans.
Yeah.
And of course, we all appreciate that, but we would like to be known by larger audiences.
Yeah,
So,
no, it was something quite sure that we will end up doing maybe a part 2 and a part 3 in the interview, because there are too many topics that we want to cover in the future. And it was very nice talking to you. And I like your music. I'm glad that you do it, not for the money, but because you like the music. And if you can get an income out of it, that will be great as well. But feel free to say a couple words in Spanish for some people in Latin America that are going to be listening to the show. So go ahead.
perfecto en español.
Sí, claro, claro.
Buenísimo. Bueno, me encantaría que en Latinoamérica, en nuestra casa hispanoparlante, podamos ser conocidos los artistas que hacemos músicas nuevas o músicas no convencionales, músicas que están por fuera de modas o de corrientes y que tienen una búsqueda genuina y una búsqueda sincera de nuevas estructuras y de nuevos sonidos. Así que los invito a escuchar. Está todo ahí disponible en el caótico mundo de Internet, pero están invitados a escuchar y a investigar lo que yo hago. Y ojalá verlos en mis conciertos, sería bárbaro.
Perfecto. Thank you very much, Sami, again for your time, and I'm quite sure we'll do a follow-up interview. And it was very nice talking to you, and I love your music. You're doing very well, man. Thank you again, man. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. I'm very glad to talk to you. And
Sure.
when you want to go on, we can go on.
Absolutely. Thanks again, man. Thanks again. Appreciate it.